Alright everyone out there in Mandolin land, Mike Heading here, coming to you today with a free mandolin lesson. I want to give you just a little bit of a music theory lesson that you can use to essentially almost double the amount of mandolin licks you know. So mandolin players are always looking for more licks, but how many can you memorize? Can you memorize 20? Can you memorize 50? So one other thing you can do other than just memorizing new licks is finding out how to take a lick you already know and use it in a new situation. So we're going to talk about the concept of relative major and relative minor. So those are a major chord and a minor chord that are closely related. So what we can do is, with a little bit of understanding of the music theory behind it, we can now take maybe a G major lick, find that relative minor, in this case E minor, and all we have to do is kind of change one note, the note we end on, and we can essentially use that G lick now as an E minor lick. So it's really cool. So I like things like this. Again, it's just a little bit of music theory and it goes a long way. So let's jump into this lesson. Here we go. Okay, so real quick, before we get into some specific licks we can try, let's just go over the music theory behind this really quick, because I think it'll help you understand the concept, okay? So we won't get too much into it, but basically our major chord, in this case we'll use the example G, is made up of three notes called the chord tones. In this case, the notes are G, our root note, B, the third note of the scale, and D, the fifth note. So any G major chord is going to be a combination of two of those notes or three of them. That's when you're strumming any G chord you know, you're playing a combination of those three notes, G, B, and D. Those are the chord tones that make up a G chord, okay? So that you don't have to memorize that, although I probably would recommend it at some point. It's very helpful because those notes are going to be very safe when playing licks in the key of G, right? Those are the notes that build the chord, so it makes sense that if a guitar player or another mandolin player was strumming a G chord, those G, B, and D notes would be very safe. So that's helpful to know that for a lot of reasons. One, for improvising, you could start making up a little melody using those chord tones. The other thing is, common bluegrass melodies are most likely going to start on one of those three notes. So you might hear something like, you know, like a Will the Circle Be Unbroken, or something like, you know, something like that, or so that's an example of starting a melody on each of those three chord tones. So again, that could be another whole lesson in itself, but just know that chords are made up of notes, and in this case the notes are called chord tones because those are the notes that build that chord, okay? So that's our relative major, that's our happy chord, okay? But two of those three notes also make up another chord, in this case the relative minor, E minor. So we use the G note, becomes the third of E minor, our B note becomes the fifth, and then if we add, instead of the D note, we play an E. Now we have an E minor chord. So E, G, and B, right? So you can see that G note and that B note are in both chords, right? Okay, so that's important because you can see those two chords, the G major and the E minor, are closely related. Okay, so what we can do with that information is now we can take a lick that might work for G, something like that, and notice how we're ending on the G note, right? So we could do, and just do like a little strumming. Now watch if I play that exact same lick but end on the E note instead. Now we have an E minor lick, right? So even something as simple as like, another G. And you don't have to play it always note for note, but just use that idea. You know, you can kind of start to hear ending on that note makes it an E minor lick, right? Same thing, I could end high, something like. Hear that? So you can hear how that goes to an E minor. So all I'm changing essentially is the last note that I'm ending on. I'm either ending on a G relative major, or I'm ending on an E note relative minor. Okay, so I should preface this as well by saying this isn't going to work with every single lick, okay? So you obviously just have to try it and see if it sounds good to your ear. It won't work as good with licks that are further outside of like the normal scale, like a G7. Like a bluesy lick like that won't translate as well to an E minor. It'll sound a little bit more outside of the scale. But any of those major pentatonic, kind of regular sounding licks, you know, using the major scale will work really well. Again, what I just recommend is just try it. You can see I'm just doing some strumming on each chord to kind of get those the tonality in my head, right? I can play some licks. And it doesn't have to be exactly the same, remember. Just think about where you're landing. Okay, so the other way you can find where that relative minor is find your root note and then go down 3 frets. 1, 2, 3. That's your relative minor. It's the 6th note of the scale. So if you walk up the G major scale from the low, G, 2nd note, 3rd note, 4th note, 5th note, 6th note. The 6th note of the scale is the relative minor. So you can remember it that way, or you can remember, you find the root note, and then you walk down 3 frets. Right? That's your relative minor. So let's do some more examples, just to give you some practice, right? So some other common ones would be C, right? So now our root's down here, walk down 3 frets. In this case, it's A minor, right? So we got C, A minor. So your C is here, your A minor is also here, right? Your open A, right? Or you got C way up here, right? Something like that. That'd be an A minor. C and A minor. So any of your C licks you're working on, you can now try and see if you can make up an A minor version. It's very good practice. If you do them out of closed positions, so if you're playing out of this bluegrass shape here, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, those are the notes of the scale, right? 5, 6, 7, root, right? So your roots are here, your 6 is here, your 6 is also here. Or, so you can work out of this shape to find your minor chords. So a lot of times, again, more like jam grass, where you might be an extended jam between a major and a minor chord can sound really cool. So using those shapes, you know, you can hear how all those licks essentially work. Those are very major pentatonic licks, but then they become minor pentatonic licks for A minor, right? You know, I'm again introducing some other notes, but so that's another common one. Another common one would be D and B minor, right? So you know. You can do it with any chord. The other thing that's cool is it works in both directions, right? So if you know a B minor lick, for example, you can now make it a D lick, right? So if I have something like, maybe something like that, or like another B minor-ish lick, you know, something like that, or now I could go, or end there, you know, right? So it's cool because it works in both directions. You can convert a minor lick to major, to the relative major, or you know, revert a major lick to a minor. My guess is if you're more on the beginner intermediate side, you're mainly going to be converting major licks to minor, but again, as you get more advanced, now you can do it both ways. Let's say you have a cool G minor lick, right? You know, something like, you know, something like that. Something that works out of that shape, right? Now you could do, and there it becomes a B flat lick, right? So you might not know a lot of B flat licks, but let's say you're working on a song in G minor, maybe Kentucky Mandolin or you know, some bluegrass song. Now you can convert those to major licks, right? So that'd be like B flat right there. That's that same shape we were just talking about. So just move that around. One more common one. Again, you can do this with any chord, but it would be A, and then F sharp minor is the relative minor. So okay, so I don't want to throw too much at you at this lesson, but again, use this idea as a jumping off point. Dip your toe in the water. Get used to that idea that a lick can be used in multiple situations. That might be new to you in itself. So that could be a very important, you know, door opening. It's like, okay, I can now take this lick and now use it in a different situation. The goal of this, remember, is just to reduce the amount of licks you need to memorize so you can spend less time just memorizing licks, more time playing music. All right, hopefully that helps you out. Good luck and keep picking. You got this.